No, it looks good.
It's okay. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's noon, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you to everyone for joining us for today's event. My name is Haven Spanier, and I'm the Senior Director of Programming at the U of SC Alumni Association, and I have the honor of welcoming our guest today, Mr. Rick Wade. Rick Wade is Senior Vice President of Strategic Alliances and Outreach at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Rick develops and implements programs and initiatives to help the chamber to create new business relationships and partnerships across diverse audiences. He also provides counsel on policy issues and leads special projects. His wealth of knowledge and experience in both the public and private sectors enable him to give a megaphone to the voice of business across the country and share the positive impacts of the free enterprise system. Before joining the Chamber, Rick was principal of the Wade Group, a strategic communications and global business development firm, and was a partner at Harv's Investment Group, a consultancy that facilitated foreign direct investment to the U.S. Previously, Rick was a senior advisor and deputy chief of staff to former Secretary of Commerce Gary Locke, where he was a liaison to the White House, business, trade associations, civic organizations, and local governments. He was a member of the White House task forces on Puerto Rico, small business contracting, automobile recovery, military families, and historically Black colleges and universities. He also served on the Interagency Business Council and President Joe Biden's task force on the Middle Class America, and worked with the White House on implementing the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Among many other impressive accolades, Rick received his BS from the University of South Carolina and an MPA from Harvard University. He was awarded honorary doctorates from Benedict College and South Carolina State University and has received numerous awards for exemplary leadership and public service. Quite the list of accolades. I know we are very excited to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be back home with my fellow South Carolina Gamecocks. And let me just say that it is good be back home talking to my Gamecocks and at the University of South Carolina. I'm really thrilled. I've been looking forward to this moment. And just to give you some context and background that might give you some understanding of my career trajectory, I was born and raised in Lancaster, South Carolina, and grew up in a family where I actually was first generation to go to college, and it was actually during the time at the end of what was then legal segregation. And when I started elementary school, there were still segregated schools, and I didn't go to a middle school, to an integrated school, that is, until my middle school years. And I found teachers who believed in me and who helped to shape my vision, my dreams, and helped to shape me. And was afforded a wonderful opportunity with the local industry scholarship, Springs Industries back at the time, to attend the University of South Carolina. And I say that because that's where I was equally or just as much shaped. I think my dreams, my values, I give credit to my experience at the university. And one of my mentors, ironically, back in Lancaster, was a local dentist, and he inspired me so much that I thought I wanted to be a dentist, and that actually is what led me to major in biology, en route to hopefully being the kind of dentist that he was, who inspired me so much growing up as a young boy in Lancaster, South Carolina. But here's the beauty of that experience, of my college experience. I think that when I got to USC, and I do believe that universities, particularly the undergraduate levels, are kind of really fascinating laboratories to experiment and test your own dreams and your aspirations. But it was at USC that I really, got involved in so many different student organizations and recognized that my real passion and my calling was really in more service and leadership. And, whether it was being in the honor society or pledging my fraternity of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, being a student intern, even at the state capitol for both the House of Representatives and the Senate, and interning in the administration of the university, in intercollegiate athletes, sports, that is, at the university. All of that helped shape me and expose me kind of to the new worlds of opportunities. And so while at the university, I did actually complete my undergraduate degree in biology. However, I kind of pivoted more towards a trajectory of more leadership and service. And interesting enough, my first job after I graduated from Carolina was actually in the admissions office. And as strangely as that might sound, it was an amazing experience because growing up in rural Lancaster, I'd never really been much out of South Carolina. And I'll never forget back then, we didn't have social media and the recruitment strategies that we have today. But as an admissions recruiter, they gave me an old station wagon and boxes of brochures. And they said, Rick, your territory is New York and New Jersey. And onward I went up I-95. And it was an amazing opportunity to not just tell the story about the University of South Carolina, but I, again, was exposed to different cultures and experiences outside of South Carolina. And that was a really pivotal turning point for me at Carolina, because subsequently I worked in administration. I worked for 3 presidents of the University of South Carolina, in a position as executive assistant to the president, as well as what we call director of state government and community relations, serving as a liaison to the General Assembly in South Carolina, advocating and lobbying for funding and other issues that help to strengthen our institution. And from there, got invited to come back and work the House of Representatives, the Ways and Means Committee, and ultimately to serve as Chief of Staff for the Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, Nick Theodore. And what a wonderful experience that was to be what some used to call Deputy Lieutenant Governor, helping to shape the policies and interests of the Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, who ultimately ran for governor. He was unsuccessful, and I was fortunate to have met a gentleman by the name of Pat Zinner during that time, who was the president and CEO of Roche Carolina, a pharmaceutical company, manufacturing company. And from that relationship, we had a great conversation, and that was my first entry point into corporate America, where I became employed as one of their lobbyists, heading up the governmental affairs division for the Southeast, relocated to Atlanta, and just had a wonderful experience, again, understanding how private sector works. And then decided that I wanted to realize another passion or dream of mine, which is to go back to graduate school. And I took a leave from the company and had the pleasure of going to Harvard University, where the Kennedy School of Government, where I was fortunate to attend there as a Kennedy Fellow, and studied business government policy, everything from international trade to tax policy, this whole interesting place where business and government intersect, and ended up in Washington, D.C., working for Hoffman LaRoche Pharmaceutical Company in their Federal Government Affairs Office. And this is where the story gets interesting. And I look forward to your questions and having a real conversation and sharing any more of my life experience. But I get a call from a guy by the name of Jim Hodges, who had just gotten elected governor of South Carolina. And we talked, and he was excited. I was excited for him. And he afforded me an opportunity to come back to South Carolina to serve on his cabinet. And along with my good friend, Steve Benjamin, who is now mayor and a Carolina graduate, as you know, I led the Department of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, an agency, a cabinet agency here in South Carolina that provided prevention, intervention, treatment services of those who had been unfortunately suffering from addiction. And it was a great opportunity, not just to provide an important service, but to understand how to run an agency, to run a government agency at the state level. And then I was bitten by the political bug and actually ran for Secretary of State of the state of South Carolina in 2002. It's a wonderful experience, fell short, but the experience in itself was fascinating and amazing. And to this day, that really got me involved to a large extent in another phase of my life in terms of politics. I ended up working, thanks to Ed Sellers, the chairman and president of the Blue Cross Blue Shield at the time, invited me to come work at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I worked there for a number of years in the executive office at Palmetto GBA, one of the subsidiaries of Blue Cross Blue Shield. And as I'm sitting at my desk, and this is a true story, one day I'm happy where I am. I get this call, and I thought it was a fraternity brother playing a joke on me. And says, "This is Barack Obama. I'm trying to reach Rick Wade." And lo and behold, after I said some words or used some expletives that probably wasn't appropriate at the time, I met with then Senator Obama in Washington, D.C., and the rest is history. It changed the course of my career. And we had a wonderful conversation. I left Blue Cross and became a senior advisor, one of the architects of then Senator Obama's first presidential campaign, moved to Chicago. And once he was elected, I was afforded an opportunity. We did not have a Secretary of Commerce on day one after his inauguration in 2009. And so I was asked to go lead the Department of Commerce, which I did until the appointment of Gary Locke, who was the governor of Washington State. And he was named Secretary of Commerce. And I stayed on with him as his top senior advisor, deputy chief of staff, a number of roles, and had a wonderful experience. One of my first tasks when I was at the Department of Commerce, within 2 months, they were like, "Rick, you got to lead a trade mission to India." And what a wonderful experience that was. And again, having never really been out of the country except for some family vacation, I led my first trade mission of companies to India, and understood then the importance of international trade and this global environment in which 95% of the world's consumers live, and how to connect our businesses in America and deal with policies, again, that affect business and the business interests of American companies abroad. So that was a wonderful experience. And I did that for several years and decided to leave. And I started my own company, the Wade Group, which is a consultancy tapping into my own experience, particularly globally, working and advising companies on how to do business abroad, particularly in the area also of foreign direct investment, advising companies, foreign companies, on investing in the United States. And the last part of this sort of journey, which leads me to where I am, I'm still a member of the Democratic National Committee. We're at the Democratic Convention in Philadelphia, and I it was one of those evenings where I just didn't want to hear any more speeches. So a couple of friends, we walk downtown Philadelphia and we see a sign that says the United States Chamber of Commerce reception. And this is a true story. We literally crashed the reception and had some great food and drinks. And I meet this amazing woman named Suzanne Clark, who happens to be the executive vice president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We had a wonderful conversation, shared stories and experiences on how we look at business industry in America. And that's how I ended up now as senior vice president of the largest business organization in the world, the United States Chamber of Commerce, where I developed strategic alliances and partnerships all about advancing the business interests of America, not just domestically, but abroad. One of my most successful initiatives that I recently launched, and I think you'll all appreciate this, is what we call the Equality of Opportunity Initiative. After the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, and we've all witnessed the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on communities of color, the private sector across America decided to band together for good reason and really lean in on addressing and closing what we call the inequality gaps or equality of opportunity gaps in America. And so I've been leading this really fascinating, very historic work across the United States of America, convening business and industry to address and affect policies, whether it's in education or criminal justice reform, entrepreneurship, 8 different pillars, as well as advancing private sector solutions independent of policy. And it's been a fascinating body of work, because I do believe while we think of inequality or racial inequality of America as a moral imperative, and it's the right thing to do. But there's also the business case that when we address these inequalities, where everybody has a fair shot at the American dream and being a part of our economy, that our entire economy wins, and so does our society. So I'll put a pause there. Happy to have entertain any questions and continue the conversation. But the bottom line is that my whole career, and I think who I am as an American, as a Black man in America, all began to a large extent with my experience at the University of South Carolina. And I'm so grateful for that experience. in helping me to become who I am. And the good news, I'm still climbing, still growing, still learning, but that's where it began.
Thank you so much for sharing. We already have a few questions, so I will get started with those. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type those either into the chat or the Q&A, whatever is easier for you. You can pull those up across the bottom of your screen if you're unfamiliar with Zoom. But our first question for you is, how does the U.S. Chamber work with national associations such as the National League of Cities?
Well, the national on a number of different fronts. I mean, if you think about one, there are domestic issues that we all have to deal with. For example, I'll give you an example, infrastructure. We've been working on driving the need for strengthening America's roads and bridges, and infrastructure, quite frankly, also means broadband, and how we create these opportunities for people to have access to internet. So we've been leading that effort, and that's just as much a local issue, quite frankly, more than it is a federal issue. So we work very closely with the National Leagues of Cities, National Mayors Association. I don't know that there's not too many groups and organizations across American society that we don't interface with here on a local level, domestic level in the United States. Very important partnerships with local cities and states and communities. And I may mention also the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, as I mentioned, is the largest business advocacy organization in the world. You may oftentimes hear state and local chambers. They're part of our whole ecosystem, what we call our federation. And then across the world, we have what's called the American Chambers of Commerce, located in over 122 countries around the globe. These are entities that are organized, that represent the interest in country of U.S. companies and the private sector. So a broad, vast network of state and local chambers, international chambers, trade associations that represent industry interests like the Motion Picture Association, the Recording Industry Association, all of those various associations that you often hear of, we kind of are the centerpiece that brings them all together in a common private sector agenda.
Thank you. Our next question is from Caroline. She says, going back to the career transition between academia at USC to lobbying, can you speak a bit more on the transition, how you pursued the opportunity, how you knew it was the correct choice to make, and etc.?
You know, that's a really good question. I don't know that one of the things that I look back over my career, and I don't know if this works for everyone, but you know, ironic enough, I don't know if I've ever stayed in any one place more than 3 or 4 years, but it's worked for me because it's given me such a vast experience in so many different areas and sectors and communities. So I don't know that wasn't necessary by design. When I worked at the university, I worked in admissions, and I think there's something to say about you never know who's watching. I mean, I got the call. Would you be interested in considering an opportunity in the House of Representatives? And the same in most aspects of my career. And I think the lesson there is just always do good work. Work hard. You know, my grandmother used to say, let the work you do speak for you. And I think that's been part of my core value system, is just to work hard wherever I am and learn and grow and expand and be open to opportunities that may not necessarily been in your career path and trajectory. I never would have thought that when I was majoring in biology to be a dentist. Well, you may say I never used that, but I was able to use that knowledge when I worked for the pharmaceutical company. I mean, I understand a little bit more going into that about the manufacturing and chemical products and interactions of drugs, et cetera. So I would argue that all of it's been sort of the threads have all come together in a fascinating way, but not a way that I quite frankly planned for. And so it's worked for me. I'm not suggesting that works for everybody, but I've been very open to exploring and experiencing different pathways that quite frankly have all come together in a way that's made me more global in my perspective and my experiences, and therefore I can lead from various different vantage points.
Great advice, applicable to all career fields, certainly. All right, our next question is from Billy. What were some of the biggest factors you considered when going on to continue your education at Harvard?
The Harvard thing is interesting because I had always, even as a kid, I mean, again, even though I was first generation, I had heard that Harvard was the best. Now, it's debatable because I could say USC is the best, but I always wanted to go there. But the determining factor for me was when I was in Atlanta working for Roche, it was just the right timing. I'd worked for Roche, leading their government affairs based in Atlanta for about 2.5, 3 years. I remember that's probably been my average where I've stayed places where I just felt a need to learn and grow, or somebody presented another opportunity. But it was just the right timing and feeling for me. I was obviously much younger than I am now. I could take the risk. And I applied and got accepted. And thank goodness, again, was awarded a fellowship at the Kennedy School of Government. So it all worked out just well. But again, I don't know that there was a perfect time, but it was a time that fit me in terms of my career trajectory, as I was still kind of building my foundation. And I thought I needed to get that graduate education out of the way first, because I knew that once you start kind of getting out in life and you get in your career and you start making money, then all of a sudden your priorities for going back to school and getting a graduate degree or whatever perhaps may come secondary. But I knew I wanted to get, and I knew the importance of having a graduate degree. So I made the investment and took the time from my career to do it at that point.
Thank you. I know we have some current USC students as well as alumni on here, so I'm sure that was valuable information for anyone considering going back to school. Our next question is from Travis. He says, thanks for sharing your journey. Do you have any insights on strategies to better align U.S. business opportunities and engagement abroad with the U.S. foreign aid?
Yeah, and when you say U.S. foreign aid, I'm assuming that Travis, I'm not sure if you're talking about aid in terms of like development or aid in terms of investment. Kind of two different things when we talk about the global. But let me try to address both. One, I think there's significant opportunities, and quite frankly, it's important that when we think about business, that we do think about it being global. The connectivity is important. We often hear about tariffs and China and all of that, but here's the deal. 95% of the world's consumers live outside of our borders. I mean, that old riddle about why did the bank robber rob the bank is where the money is and where the money was. So that's how you have to look at the global marketplace. It's where 95% of consumers in the world are. And so, the beauty of America with our innovation and our ability to create and manufacture products, the customers to a large extent are not in the United States. And so that's why trade policy becomes so important. But on the other hand, I think that there is an obligation, and we do it in so many ways, to provide aid in developing countries to strengthen their free enterprise, their marketplace systems, because it all is inextricably connected. You think of agencies like the United States Agency for International Development. I mean, that's a lot of what they do. We have one of our many institutes or centers at the Chamber is called the Center for Enterprise Development. That's what we do. We have a whole team that works across developing countries, working with them to build a free enterprise system. And I think that's where the United States is that we have that strength. I mean, we know how to do this. So I would argue it again, whether it's aid or investment or foreign investment coming into the United States is just as important. And that's one of the areas that I helped to lead when I was at the U.S. Department of Commerce, developing what now has become known as Select USA, a platform for foreign investors to engage in and explore and look at opportunities here in America. So it's all connected, whether it's on the aid side, investment side, or development side. The United States plays a very important role in all of those domains.
Continuing on that thread of working with other countries, we have a question from Lourdes. They're an alumni from IMBA at USC, and they're from Peru. They're wondering how you see the commercial opportunities between the US and Peru, and what would be your recommendations for Peruvian companies that would want to do business with the US?
Well, I don't know. That's not one of the countries that I'm specifically. We have a whole team that deals with the various regions of the world, and I'm happy to get you connected for more in-depth understanding of what we're doing specifically with Peru. I can tell you, but in that region, we're doing a lot of work. I mean, it's just as I described earlier. It's about opening up markets for American businesses, not only sell their products, but create these mutually beneficial trade relationships. And shout out to you. I'm actually on the board of the Folk Center at the Dollarmore School of Business, and I'm always just fascinated with how the world sits right there at that International School of Business, and I'm working with the university through the School of Business to strengthen our partnerships and relationships with USC. I actually started, and unfortunately during the pandemic, we couldn't do it obviously this past year. Well, we brought a whole delegation of international business students to the Department of Commerce to sit down with our international team. And the probably most fascinating visual was that the whole room, when you looked at the students around the board table, they were from so many different countries. And the alignment there with what we do at the chamber was just amazing. And I'm really looking to work on that more to strengthen those ties, because that could be opportunities for internships, not just at the chamber, but through our American chambers in countries around the world. There's just so much opportunity, notwithstanding the incredible expertise. I mean, some of the folks, not most of the folks at the U.S. Chamber, particularly in our international division, have just vast experience working abroad, living abroad. They've been working on these types of issues for years, and their connectivity abroad is just phenomenal. So I look forward to strengthening and bringing more of that to bear through our university, particularly through the International School of Business.
Thank you. Our next question is from Andrew. He is retiring from the Marine Corps after 30 years this summer and is interested in your opinion on how to best pursue opportunities with the promotion of business investments in the interest of the economy. He's currently researching U.S. Development Finance Corporation and is wondering if you are familiar with their mission and what advice.
Well, one, thank you for your service. That's one of the biggest divisions of our U.S. Foundation is a whole program called Hiring Our Heroes, and we're now looking to really focus that as well as supporting veteran entrepreneurs who want to start businesses and do more business and creating more connectivity to private sector and corporations across America. So, Andrew, if there's something there I can do, I'd love to get your thoughts and also think through how we can support you in your work. But what used to be, they changed the name of that agency now, but it's very important. I mean, again, this is one of the investment corporations of the United States that provides investment in developing countries to build infrastructure, because again, these worlds are linked. Our business in America, and to the extent that we can provide development and capital and investment in countries where we do business, just strengthens the whole bilateral and international trade relationships. So I'm familiar with that agency. Other agencies that are similar, like Exim Bank, which finances the interests of American businesses, not just large, but small businesses who want to do exporting across the world also. And OPIC, there are a number of different agencies that work every day to create mutual investment in trade, and the Development Corporation is one of them.
Wonderful. It sounds like a great program. The next question is from Katerina, who had the pleasure of working with you at the Palmetto GBA. They're wondering any advice for master's level persons who feel like they are in a mid-career standstill.
Yeah, and I know we use this sort of phrase, but it's really important. I mean, I think it's about constantly reinventing. And thank you. I mean, when I was at Palmetto GBA, again, I think, the world, America is vastly different than when I was there. And so, how do you get the skills to adapt and adjust to this ever-changing economy and climate? I mean, who would ever known that, we're in a world pandemic and that we're all remotely working from home? I tell people, and as I speak a lot, what a wonderful time. to engage in some retooling or reskill or educating, because you can all do it virtually. And I think that helps. And thinking through what are the economies and the job opportunities on the other side of the pandemic, where you can not only use your current skills, but again, with that retooling and reskilling during this time, what are those opportunities? And if you think about them, there are a lot of emerging economies that will grow from this pandemic. Certainly on the healthcare side, I mean, I think there's an opportunity. I'm on what's called a National COVID Collaborative, and where it's not just about ending the pandemic, and that's front and center. But how do we think about jobs of the future? How do we think companies? I mean, what are the emerging companies that will be born from this pandemic, which certainly I've never experienced in my lifetime, and I don't know that we've experienced this type of pandemic in our history. So, again, the short of it is, as you think about careers and look at other options, be willing to just take that chance, continuous learning, and, and be open. I mean, relocation. I mean, you have to go to where the opportunities and the jobs are. And to the extent you have that flexibility, I think that could add to your success trajectory as you think of moving around, particularly in a mid-career, because I know, because I've done that, I've been through that, and I think all of us, I still feel that even in a mid-career, I think hopefully got years left, that there's always a risk. And I think it is about mitigating those risks as much as possible, and being open to new opportunities wherever they may be.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kevin. Kevin says, how do you see SMB roles in the Chamber of Commerce, and what are the advantages for SMB to join?
Extremely important. I mean, one of the things that we all know, which I'm sure you're aware of, that small businesses, minority businesses are the net job creators in the United States, and also the most who've been impacted during this pandemic. So we're leading a whole lot of work. I mean, everything from fighting every day with Congress to make sure that there's PPP funding and that the funding is getting to small businesses across America. I mean, the Chamber is front and center. That's what we've been focused on primarily, to a large extent, during the pandemic, to make sure that you can get the loans, the lending, the financing, or being forgivable, to keep your doors open. We did a research study with one of our member companies, MetLife, and we found that 66% of minority businesses are concerned about permanently closing. Some research showed that 41% of Black businesses in America alone have already closed. Now, that's unconscionable. And so this is a big deal, because SMBs, small businesses, minority businesses are really, again, the net job creators. Moreover, these are very important anchors in our communities. And I remember, growing up in Lancaster, and even here in Columbia, these are the local leaders. They're very important threads in the fabric of our social organizational structure. So we're front and center, leading the effort on not just saving small and minority businesses, but also helping them reimagine and position them for success after the pandemic. And as I talk a lot and write a lot about, this is that challenging opportunity or time too for SMBs to think about joint ventures, to think about mergers. One of the things I am leading on behalf of the U.S. Chamber with corporations across America is connecting more SMBs to corporate supplier chains. The whole front of supplier diversity, we think, is a rich opportunity that we can add tremendous value. And so we're working a lot, working with various other organizations, such as the National Minority Supplier Development Council and others, but driving the effort to get more companies to do business with SMBs across America.
Definitely important work. Thank you. Next question is from Billy. He says, what are some of the biggest differences or challenges you faced when moving between roles specific to South Carolina and roles with the federal level of focus?
The biggest challenge is just for me early on was just change of culture, adapting to new cultures and new environments, which quite frankly, I think I've done fairly well. I actually still live in South Carolina and Washington because I just don't want to give up my own cultural roots here that shaped all of my values. So I kind of moved back and forth quite a bit. And even my experience, I mean, I've lived and worked in China for almost a month. But that's the way you grow. I mean, I think by moving to different cultures and communities and different jobs, again, for me, it's contributed a great deal to how I view the world. And I think it's also provided me with the unique experience of being able to move across multiple sectors in multiple roles within companies and organizations. And especially in a time like the pandemic, as we talked about earlier, I mean, it's one thing not to be so typecast that you can only do one thing. And I think I've been afforded that opportunity with having had so many experiences in so many different organizations and environments. Obviously, as you think about, South Carolina or living and working in other environments, in addition to, just environmental, you have cost of living. If you have families, you have to think about the mobility of your family and being able to provide. All of those things are important, obviously. But there is something to say. Again, for me, having grown up in rural Lancaster, South Carolina, first generation, having those experiences in new environments are just extremely rewarding. That's not to say you'll never invest or get back or do additional work in South Carolina, because I do both, and leave South Carolina behind. But there is something to say about growing and experiencing in the world beyond Lancaster, beyond South Carolina, beyond America, and experiencing it across the world.
Thank you. Our next question is from Corey. Corey says, as a native Colombian, sometimes the local economy trajectory in South Carolina doesn't seem comparable to other states. What do you see as areas of economic opportunities in South Carolina as remote work becomes more common?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of assets in South Carolina, as there are in every state. And I think the key is to build upon our strengths. And that was one of the things when I was at Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have a very strong sort of back office operations, Blue Cross. And how do you build on these anchor companies that exist? You look at Boeing down in the Low Country. And then you look at the upstate with automotive, and they're just killing it up there. How do you build on these existing economies, but also transition and bring other economies, other emerging market opportunities into our current infrastructure? And so there are rich assets here. I mean, not to mention, our beaches and the coastline and all of the tourism in South Carolina, which, as you can appreciate, has been hit disproportionately hard during the pandemic. But it is about thinking, that there will be another side of the pandemic. And if we can just hold on till we get there, I'm confident that tourism will be back thriving again. And what are the opportunities there? And the common thread that runs through all of this is technology. And that's where I think where we have tremendous opportunity in South Carolina to lean in and lead in connecting all of those various sectors and using technology and using the rich experience of the University of South Carolina and other schools. But the University of South Carolina is positioned not just by being here in Columbia, but when you think about the other colleges, whether it's in the upstate or in Beaufort and others, our infrastructure is unlike any others. And I think we have to be and continue to be a major driver of South Carolina's economic future. I mentioned earlier, and I'm just passionate about this whole global piece. A lot of folks don't know of the rich foreign investment and the trade that takes place between South Carolina and the world. And I think that's an opportunity to grow and expand and create more businesses and jobs around this whole convergence of international trade and global opportunities.
Thank you. Our next question is advice for any current students who may be watching or anyone who's interested in a career change, how they can get experience to help them grow within working for government or working in commerce.
I'm a big, huge proponent of internships. I mean, I can tell you, again, as I mentioned earlier, having been an intern in the South Carolina Senate and the South Carolina House of Representatives, in administration at USC, all of that matters because you're not only getting knowledge, but you're also building relationships. And in relationships are not just about who you know, but it's also about who knows you. And so, get internships, get that exposure, get that work experience, again, whether it's in South Carolina, whether it's in Washington or anywhere in the world. And I just think that's extremely valuable where you can get that practical experience combined with your education and be a little nimble. I mean, be willing to sort of maybe step a little out of the box that you might have designed. Because again, if I had stayed in the box that I thought I wanted to be in, I would be a dentist today. And I respect dentists, they're very important, but that just wasn't for me. And I was able and willing to not force myself in that box, but be open to other paths and trajectories. And I think I'm better off for it.
Thank you. I know that was valuable advice to people. The next question is a two-parter. What is the most challenging part of your current job and what's your favorite part?
The most challenging part is, and we see it all, we witness it right now, is we're front center trying to build a bipartisan approaches to solving these problems that I talked about. And that's challenging. And obviously at this point in time in our country, where we witness our very democracy being challenged and just in my lifetime, I've never seen the sort of partisanship, the racial division. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, business and economy, it's got to be bipartisan. It's got to be across divides. And that's hard work. But this is what the chamber does very well and has done well for 100 years. And the exciting part that I love about my job is that it's when we do have successes, and we are. And also it's just exciting because my thesis is that if we make sure that folks have economic opportunity, that we can deal with a lot of the social problems that affect America. So, and I'm leading a lot of that work. And I wake up every day and I'm just excited. I mean, I get a chance to work with CEOs across the country and take on some issues that affect all of us. And just to know that the work that I do, the contributions, the sacrifice I've made, that I'm making a difference. And I know that we are. When I see young people, not just from the University of South Carolina, started a whole initiative with historically Black colleges, for example, exposing them to careers in governmental affairs. And now to see them working in these spaces because they've never been exposed before. That's what brings me joy. And knowing that the work that I do is being impactful. And I have so many opportunities to do that across so many sectors because we touch every sector, region, and part of the world. And I get a chance to see that and be a part of the change that we're seeing play out in the United States and across the world.
Thank you. This next question goes back to your time at USC, but what is your favorite part of being a Gamecock and your favorite USC tradition?
Football game, tailgating. Are you kidding? Yeah, but I mean, that was, listen, I think that when you say the most fun part, of course, it was learning, it was building a relationship, having amazing faculty members who really, I mean, kind of not just were teaching in the classroom, but they were mentors outside of the classroom. But it was a fun part of being in undergrad. And if I could do it all over again, trust me, I would. Because that was a really, again, laboratory, and it shaped me in terms of who I am. But, the tailgate parties, the football games, and my fraternity and of Omega Psi Phi and that fellowship, the brotherhood that comes with that experience about being at USC. And that part of the experience is so valuable because that helps you grow. So my experience at Carolina was just rich, and if I had to do it all over again, I just wouldn't change. I just wouldn't change a thing. Wouldn't change a thing.
That's great to hear. Well, it looks like we got through all of the questions. So if anyone has any last minute burning questions, type those into the chat or the Q&A. quickly, but thank you so much, Rick, for joining us. I learned so much. I'm sure that everyone else on the call did as well. It was really fascinating to hear about all of your experiences through your jobs and at South Carolina. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. I know you guys received some great insight. You'll get an email with the recording if you have any more questions. And you can go back and watch that, and there will be a survey as well, so you can let us know how we can keep improving these online events. But thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for letting me be with you today. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone, have a great afternoon.